I love Tango games. For the PS4 generation, they made two of my absolute favorites. The Evil Within was a twist and interesting take on the Resident Evil 4 formula. The visuals and entire experience really showed how you were fighting through this nightmare. The combat was solid with some satisfying violence. It had some areas to improve on with needing a better frame rate, and some of the storytelling was convoluted in spots. But overall, it was a great game that I enjoyed going back to. The Evil Within 2 is one of those rare sequels where it completely surpasses the original. While some of the more unique points of the storytelling was traded in for a more traditionally told narrative, what we got in return for 2 was a game that you could get emotionally invested in, and provided a very satisfying story with a main character that I rooted for. Gameplay-wise, things were smoothed out, and I liked how there were more larger levels that allowed for a lot of exploration. The villains were memorable, and the finale stays with you. And while The Evil Within 2 does provide a lot of closure, it does leave some elements open for a third game, so I always thought that someday we might see this. But it seems like The Evil Within 3 was traded in for a completely new IP, and honestly I was a bit mixed when I first saw it. I wasn't completely sold on the first-person view with Ghostwire, but the visuals really looked good and the game looked appropriately weird for a Tango game. Now that I got my hands on it, I'm having a really good time with it. So much so, I think this game deserves a lot more attention than it got. I have played it for about 5 hours or so, and I wanted to show this game some much needed love, so let's dive in. Ghostwire Tokyo is a first-person shooter only in the most general sense. How the game feels and honestly controls is a bit different than a standard first-person shooter. The combat is fun as you try to take out visually interesting and creepy enemies along with the exploration. The open world side of things does take on a familiar design setup, but the world and much of the game's style provides a uniqueness that helps you to look past it. Story-wise, it provides a narrative that is interesting right from the start, and one with the appropriate amount of weird and odd elements to keep you hooked. It feels familiar in some areas and very original in others. And most importantly, it shows me that Tango Games is not a one-trick pony with their Evil Within games, as they can do something completely different with Ghostwire. Now, as I said, the game is played from a first-person view, but when it comes to the combat, do not go in expecting this to be a standard first-person shooter. The combat is a bit more calculated, slower, and even clunkier than you might expect. You start out with a green energy blast that you can fire off from your hands. You can send off quick shots or charge it up to send out a more powerful blast. The sound for your shots sounds like it has a lot of force backing them, and the impact itself is satisfying as well. When you hit enemies, it will leave these energy holes in them, and as you hurt them, it will expose their core more, that you can rip out for other benefits. When an enemy is killed, it's almost like a Tron Legacy D-Res look to it, and it's very cool. Something that I liked about the combat more was that it was not a mindless energy blast fest. You need to take your time to use your ammo, as later on I found myself quickly running out of ammo and needing to calculate my moves better. For example, you may be up against a few enemies with umbrellas and they can be used as shields. You can eventually blow them up, but if you aim for their exposed parts, you can bypass the shield completely. So far, I have a few offensive options at my disposal. I can use a melee hit for up-close enemies, my energy blast, a larger fire-based power, along with a very useful bow. When it comes to your defensive options, you can block most attacks, and if you time your block really well, then you can parry those attacks as well. Light stealth is seen here, where you can try and thin the herd a bit as you sneak around for silent takedowns. As you complete missions and defeat enemies, you will earn XP. Once you level up, your maximum health will increase, and you have a few skill points that you can use to choose to enhance powers and other buffs that you have. Now, like I said, from the open world design, Ghostwire takes on a familiar setup of enemy locations to remove, plenty of things to collect and get rewarded for. Something that helps to keep things interesting is how exploration is vertical in Ghostwire. So I was able to explore in Chapter 2, and I walked around the streets finding collectibles and defeating enemies. But shortly following this, you earn a grapple which lifts you up to the rooftops, and now you need to consider 2 complete different planes while exploring the map. I love this aspect of the game since the grapple is fun and easy to use, and this also gives you access to a glide for hopping between rooftops. When it comes to the side stuff, you'll be finding money, saving spirits, defeating enemies, discovering hidden collectibles, and more. As you open up more of the map, side missions will become available for you to help out other people. In one, I had to get back an umbrella that was sentimental to a young ghost. Another had me cleansing a building which involved more combat. And in a third one, I needed to find a hotel manager. The side missions I played range from having more or less narrative to it, along with having more or less gameplay as well. So far, they are good short missions, and I hope they are more involved ones as I continue to play the game.
What is this thing?
Now from a story standpoint, the narrative grabbed me right away. First we get introduced to this spirit who is looking for a body, and it doesn't seem like he has much time. He isn't able to take the body of someone living, and finds an acceptable host of someone who looks dead. It turns out this individual was not dead, and as such there is this buddy type dynamic that starts here, with the host and spirit needing to learn to work together. Many questions are raised here, and thankfully a lot of the answers are held back to keep the intrigue going past the initial introduction. I haven't beaten the game yet, but so far it's weird, trippy, and very entertaining.
There's always a lot of cats around here.
Oh yeah? Hey, let's go check somewhere else.
When it comes to the flaws, I've had a few so far. For one, I have no idea if this is an issue with Sony or Ghostwire, so the blame may not be on Ghostwire itself. So I booted up the game and I was getting visual distortion like stuff on my screen, and this made me think my TV was breaking. I tried a full reset of my PS5 and even another game. I still got the issues when I booted up Ghostwire again, but after another restart and playing a different game, I didn't get the issue. So this made me think that for some odd reason the issue was with the game itself. After some searching online, I learned that the game does not like my TV, and no one knows why, but thankfully they know how to fix it. I'll leave a link to the fix in the description if anyone else has this problem as well. Now after I got the game running, I had another issue with the game itself. The aiming and moving the camera was really off, to the point that it was going to be really annoying to play this for the entire game. Thankfully the Ghostwire subreddit had some good setting options to improve this greatly. What I found odd about this is that ideally you playtest a game, and these initial settings were objectively bad, so why were these the settings for everyone at the start? It feels like the game was shooting itself in the foot. Now these two issues were rather frustrating at the very start of the game, but as I said, the story is engaging right away, and the gameplay becomes more and more interesting as you go on. If you have some issues with your TV or controls, know that there are fixes out there to make that better. So far, Ghostwire Tokyo is underrated and deserves more attention. While I had some issues out of the gate, the story kept me interested, and as I was able to dive into it more, I found more to enjoy. Exploring both the streets and the rooftops is really great fun. The combat is different and engaging as well. My only hope is that the game continues to get better as I continue with it. So far, it's definitely worth checking out and one of the more interesting PS5 exclusives. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell, and if you'd like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description, and thank you very much for watching.